Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to take some leather blanks. I cut these out with my Cricut. This is 2 to 3 ounce veg tan leather, and it's a tooling leather. And I'm going to apply some leather paint to these earring blanks. I absolutely love ombre effects, so that's what I'm going to try for this video. Now, this is just some contact paper, and I'm going to put this under my earrings and try to stick them down to it really well. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to try to keep the paint off the back of the leather. And that is the only reason I'm doing this. So we will see how that works. I think I'll go ahead and trim that down. There's a lot of excess debris on this contact paper from my last project that I did here at my craft table. I think it just came off my brayer. Okay. So I want to make sure that the earrings are clean, that there's nothing loose on those. Now the brush that I'm going to use is just a really inexpensive brush. It says 5/8. I don't know if that's the length. I assume that's the length of the bristles, but it is a very soft bristled brush. And on the little sample piece that I used, this is what I used, and the soft bristles seem to work really well. It says Craft Smart. I believe I buy my Craft Smart paint at Walmart, so I probably got this in a big multi-pack at Walmart. Okay, so I have 3 colors of Leather Studio paint. I have navy, bright blue, and white. And I really, in the little bit that I've used this, I really love this paint. And again, on my little sample piece, here's my piece I played with, and it's the ombre effect. And if you see a line right there, that's because I really wanted to give it a workout and see if this paint would chip or crack or anything, and it didn't. You can see where I bent it, but the paint stayed on very nicely. So that's similar to the effect we're going for. I'd like to have a little bit lighter down at the bottom. We'll see if I am successful at that. So let me go ahead and shake these up. I bought my Leather Studio paints at Hobby Lobby. They're pretty inexpensive there. You can get them at Michael's also. They're more expensive at Michael's. And then you can get them on Amazon, and they're even more expensive there. I will go ahead and link to that in case that's your only option. But again, Hobby Lobby was the least expensive place where I found this. The thing with doing an ombre effect paint is you need to have moisture in the paint. So it needs to stay fairly wet for it to blend well. And it doesn't really matter if I go white, bright blue, or dark blue, white, dark blue, light blue, white, because you can just turn them over and decide that later wherever you punch your hole for your fish hook. So for me, I think it's going to be easier to work from top to bottom. And I want to start with my white and apply just a little bit of that to each earring. And I'm probably going to need a little bit more because I will have to freshen up that paint most likely as I go along. Okay, so I have my white layer. Now let's go to this medium blue. And you can see some white in that. That's okay. This is not exact science. And it's going to be beautiful when I'm done. Then my darkest, my navy blue, down at the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to try to go ahead and wipe off as much of the paint as I can off my paintbrush with just a paper towel. And there's still paint on it, but it's fairly dry. I'm going to need to angle this a little bit for me. So I'm just going to start down here, freshen that up a little bit, and go back and forth. And I can tell already I've waited way too long to be successful with this. So I'm probably going to be adding more paint as we go. So from here on out, less talk, more work. All right, let me look at this. I think the bottom needs to be darkened up a little bit and smooth out some of that paint. Okay, I think that first one looks pretty good. Now, I should have done these one at a time. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, right? So I think I'll try to cut these apart. Okay, I'll let this one dry. Now this paint dries really quickly. Like this, look at this. That's already pretty well dry. I'm a little concerned, since it is dry, about the buildup on the side of this. So I think I'm going to put this on a new piece of contact paper. And then once again, I'm going to go ahead and rub as much of the paint off the brush as I can. I'm not going to go wash it, but I'll rub off a lot of it. Okay, this one seems to have more buildup on the sides. So go ahead and fold that back and try to clean it off a little bit, mainly off the paper. Okay, now I like that one, but it looks vastly different than this one. This one has a lot less white at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and try to have this one match more the one on the left. And again, like I said earlier, you have to freshen your paint. It does need to be fairly wet. Okay, I'm going to look at these. I think they're closer to the same now. I do see a problem over here. I somehow got white right there. So I'll need to try to fix that up. And if I try to go over the whole thing, I think I'm just going to mess it up. So we'll see what happens when I try to just touch up this little spot. That looks pretty good. Try to blend it in a little bit. Okay, I'm going to call that good. Let those dry, and we'll see what they look like in about 15 to 20 minutes. Now, as I'm letting that dry, I've decided maybe it wasn't a good approach to cut the earrings first and then paint. I was trying to save on paint, but I'm going to go ahead and do a second pair where I paint the earrings first and then I cut. I think that's going to help me in two ways. I think that the two pieces will look a little more uniform, and then second of all, you won't have the buildup of paint on the sides of the leather because you'll cut that part of the leather away. Since you're cutting it away, it's not a big deal if there's paint under the edges. That will get cut away, but I still think I'd like to keep it on a piece of this contact paper. And I thought about doing different colors. I'll save that for a different video. I'd rather compare apples to apples. So I will go ahead and use the same 3 colors that I used last time. The other thing is, I think I will just put the paint directly on the leather. So let's see how this goes. Okay, so much for not getting it to the edges. I used more paint than I really needed, and so it's definitely going to the edges. So I'm rubbing off some of this excess paint. And I think I'll start in the middle and go downward. Now the goal isn't to necessarily have white up top, it's to have a really faint blue. It's getting a little dark. Well, it's not bad. I'd like it to stay really a faint blue. And it may not be as light as I'd like. It's really pretty good though, actually. Oh, I should not have jumped down 2 colors. Okay, don't go from white to the darkest you have. That is a big old boo-boo. I think I'll stop there and see how that dries. That was so much easier than doing the small pieces, so I would recommend go ahead and do a bigger piece and then cut afterwards. That is, if it cuts nicely and the blade doesn't do something damaging to the paint, which we'll find out after that dries. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at these. The backs are not perfect. They do have some paint on them, and I can see a little excess buildup of paint here and some fibers that need to be cut away. I'll take care of that later. The paint itself turned out really pretty, I think. But I don't think my method or my process was the best. And I want you to learn from that. So I would still call this a success, but a really messy success. I'm just going to set these aside to dry for probably another hour or so before I punch the holes in them. The other thing is there is a product that you can put on the fronts of these to protect your paint, and it's a specialty product. I don't have it, so I will spray them with just some matte sheen Mod Podge. So just like the other, I'll probably let this dry for about an hour, spray it with some Mod Podge, maybe let it dry another hour, and then we'll cut it. Now it's a moment of truth to make sure that we can actually paint first and then cut. I have some more contact paper. I'm going to put this on the front of my leather, the pretty side, and that will protect my mat, and it will keep nasty stuff on my mat from getting on my earrings. And this is the part that worries me, is putting this pretty side down on a cutting mat or on contact paper. Also, I cut off the 2 sides of this because that was where the most of the paint buildup was, and I didn't want that getting on my mat. I use the genuine leather setting. That's what I've used on this 2 to 3 ounce tooling leather before that I was successful with. I did try the 2 to 3 ounce tooling leather setting once, and it didn't cut through as well. Hopefully, now that I've added a thick layer of paint onto this, my setting will still work fine. Now this is the part I've been the most nervous about, so let's see how these come off. Oh, perfectly. Look, there's no paint left behind. I did let them dry for probably an hour and a half total with the paint and the Mod Podge. I sprayed the Mod Podge on really more like 15 minutes after I felt like they were fairly dry. And then it's been another hour to hour and a half after putting the Mod Podge on, and that worked wonderfully. There's the excess. You can see a really nice cut through that. Now here's the other pair where I painted the earrings after cutting them, and then here's the ones where I painted first and then cut. So on the back side you can see That one's not bad. This one has a decent amount of paint on the back of it. This should have nothing, and this should have nothing as well. So that's the positive part of painting first and then cutting. Now if you look at the sides though, it's nice to paint after you cut because your sides are painted. And I think that looks really nice. This side, you see the raw leather. So if I can get enough courage, I might try to touch up those sides with a little bit of paint. But that's just going to take more time and effort and more chance for error. So there's pros and cons of both. I'll go ahead and I'll put the hardware in these and I'll show you a picture at the end. So thanks for joining me today. If you found anything in the video helpful, inspiring, or you just enjoyed watching it, please give me that thumbs up. If you have any questions, comments, and especially if you have any suggestions for me, leave them in the comments section. And if you'd like to see what I'm working on in the future, hit that subscribe button. Thanks again. Have a great day. Bye-bye.